Recording is on.
Yeah. Okay. you are fully aware of this, right? So, well, I'll put it simply. We will present some ideas, some of our work, or some of somebody else's work, but with ideas which are connected with our own. This is not a class, actually. So the idea is to keep it like informal as possible, but also it should be, I guess, informative and good for everyone. We have some guidelines, I guess, for it to work. We will try to keep it like we both of us, each of us will speak for maybe 30 minutes, something like that. And then we will open to questions for the next 10 minutes. I'll start. Then Michael, which in my window is the guy up left, will pick up from there. Yeah. And he'll do the same. He'll speak about a topic for 30 minutes and then open for 10 more so that you could make any questions or whatever. And if there are any remaining questions, we could just, after Michael's sessions, which would last close to 40 minutes, we could go on talking and answering whatever. But there are some tech issues that we should talk about in order to make it work, I guess. So in Jitsi, you have some interesting functions. If you press the space bar, you're going to mute yourself, right? And this is actually good. You should mute yourself while we are talking. While anybody else is talking, you should mute yourself so that the audio quality will be better. There is another function in Jitsi, which is the raise your hands, which is the R. If you press R in your keyboard, you raise your hand. And yeah, yes, Luca would like to speak. PG would like to speak. This is what shows up in my MC would like to speak. Yes, I understand, Magno. You would like to speak. Yeah.
Just making sure that it's working.
Yeah, it is. We all noticed that you would like to speak. There is also the chat window. But please do not do with the chat window what you are doing with the raise your hand function. Don't just overuse it. It's not like we are going to start like a 4chan over there or something like that. Please avoid that. Like, try to use the functions and in a way to make it like communicative, right? If you raise your hand, like maybe if I'm speaking, maybe Mike could just check. Okay, someone raised their hand. I guess someone has a question, so we stop. Then you make a question, or we could just save it for the end of the extra 10 minutes, right? And now the biggest problem of it all, I guess, at least for me, right? My English is kind of just on the brink of being whatever. So we have a language problem, right? I guess everyone there understands English, I suppose, but I mean, ideally, I'd say that I'll be jumping around Portuguese e inglês, e talvez um pouco de espanhol, porque o Michael entende espanhol, viveu no México, acho que o último ano, último ano, ou qualquer coisa assim. Então eu creio que Michael compreende todo em espanhol, ou quase todo. Sim? Está por aí, sim. Então, a gente pode ficar misturando. A mim, por exemplo, interessa um bocado essa mistura de línguas. Mas, bom, a gente vai se virando, certo? É o primeiro encontro também. Temos Cliff. Hey, Cliff. Cliff is there.
Ok. I use the space bar.
Yes.
Olha que eu acho que o negócio fica fechado e quando usar esse negócio abre e fecha. Abre.
Yeah.
Hi, Michael.
Hey, Cliff. How you doing? Good to see you.
Thank you so much for this. Thank you so much for this. Paulo, posso falar rapidão? 30 segundos, 20 segundos? Galera, eu fico muito agradecido com essa força do Michael, do Paulo e de vocês. É isso que a gente tem para fazer agora, continuar o conhecimento, continuar evoluindo dentro dos parâmetros que a gente tem. Então, parabéns a todos, eu estou super interessado em o que vai acontecer nessas semanas. Eu vou ficar por um pouco hoje assistindo e acompanhando, tá? Então, vamos lá.
So, let's go for the introductions. As all of you know, I'm Paulo. Yeah. So let's skip this part and go for the introduction of Mike. Hey, Mike.
Yeah, I want to echo what Cliff was saying and say thank you very much both to Cliff and Paulo for intersecting in different reasons. You know, by now, I was supposed to be with you guys in Rio and was very much looking forward to it. And then the pandemic happened. So I am very grateful for Paulo to help organize all this. I mean, he's really done a lot more work than I have because he's there and can communicate with you guys. And then also thanks to Cliff, who had done a ton of work just to get me to Rio. And then we had this unforeseen circumstance that was beyond anyone's control. So I'm also really grateful to get to meet you guys and know, kind of keep this connection warm and flowing in hopes that someday I will be able to be there and we can all make music together and talk face to face and in person. And I think that, you know, as Paulo was saying, this is really not a class, but, you know, just a way to share ideas. You know, it's going to be very open. You know, we're going to try to set the stage here, but also just to say that at the end of all this, you know, I think Paulo and I are both open to ideas about how this should proceed. I mean, this is a new format for everybody. And I think that if anyone's got an idea and wants to contribute, for example, wants to present themselves or knows someone else that would be good to get in from elsewhere, because that might actually be kind of easy right now, please let us know after this. This is kind of a test run and we'll go from there. And it's really, you know, meant for us to be able to get together, talk about music. And so in that sense, your guys' feedback is really, really valuable. As for me, the easy answer I would say is that I'm a composer, but I have many interests outside of that. But I studied music. I studied, one of my primary influences and mentors was a American composer from the US called James Tenney, whose work I will happily share among other people. I work a lot kind of within this intersection of computing and this idea of epistemology, but a view of epistemology which is kind of traditionally known as the limits of knowledge, but assuming that the limits of knowledge are the same as the limits of computation. And as a musician, I kind of use this as self-help. You know, this is a way for me to get to kind of interesting intellectual and musical areas. And I'll give a little bit in my part today, a primer of that. And I'll try to keep it really simple just to get the wheels rolling. So again, I want to thank Paulo and Cliff and you guys for being here. And I look forward to having more interaction with you guys.
Yeah, so now I should start. I'll talk just as an introduction. I'll explain some things. As most of you know, I've been working with, I have lots of, I guess, different interests. Like I've been working with synthesizers and also some programming, music analysis, composition. But in the last years, I've been working with field recording as a tool to artistic creation. But ever since I got into field recording, it kind of has the power to widen the at least this is what occurred to me, to widen my scope of interests to the limits of music, or even to the limits of what I would call isolated sound, but bringing me to maybe grasp a sense of meaning, a sense of, and now we start to use these dangerous words like culture and language and meaning, but associated to sound. This is not something I'm fully in command, but like as almost everything I do, there is a lot of intuition mixed on the mixture. But I've been making some live presentations using field recordings and synthetic sounds, and trying to integrate the space in which I'm playing in my performance. I released 2 solo albums, which are almost fully, like 90% of it is field recording. So, and last year I was invited to be a part for the first time, to be a part of a filming crew for a project which I found really interesting, that has to do with the sound of the ox cart, o carro de boi, which is a huge tradition in Brazil. But this project was, this is a project by a foreigner researcher that had to come to Brazil to hear for the first time the sound of the ox cart, which is a tradition lost in the rest of the world. But anyway, I'll tell the story now. Yeah, this is just an introduction. I prepared sort of a text to help me. So what I'll be doing here is playing some recordings, showing you some pictures, and reading these snippets of text, which is not a ready text. It's not ready at all. And it has like this personal character. It's like a diary for me, or notes from my field research while doing this collaboration with this researcher, right? So I'll start to read it now, and I should do it for the next 30 minutes or so. I recommend you to use headphones because I'll be playing some of the files as well, which I think they are very interesting to hear, right? So, intro. The foreign condition. 1. A foreigner is not necessarily a tourist. Process. The ideas, the stories, the efforts that materialize in a specific work. Collaboration. The clash of ideas. The complex process, complex. Tech work and translation, conversations. Ambientalities, field recording, and phonography. 1. The difference is in the accent. Auxílio in Spanish and in Portuguese means the same. Help, ajuda. The first question that comes to my mind, one of those that seems to miss the target. How can one sane person be interested in the practice of field recording and also be a participant of such a project as Bilibao? Bilibao is a project, is an extended rock dash noise project from the Basque country, right? Well, it's not a phenomenon I observe exclusively in Basque researcher and sound artist Xabier Erkizia. These apparently contradictory interests I find also in the works of Brazilian artists Telmo Cristóvão, Bella, Sananda Cássia, J.P. Carron, to name a few. All those artists who produce what I would simplify as extremely loud and intense works, but also they produce it with field recordings. But somehow I could easily imagine Xabier, this researcher, giving me what I would consider a fair answer. Why not? So let me say what I think is wrong with the question. Besides the naivety of the image of nature implied in it, somehow connecting the field recording practice to pure and ideal worlds, the question, also misses the multiplicity of results already displayed by the history of the practice, field recording, itself. 2. A simple definition. Field recording is the practice of recording sound outdoors, out of the recording studio.
Olha só um na cara de mim. Isso aí alguém viu, depois da foto você vamos aí, rapaz. Egidija. Essa aqui tá ruim. Depois. Pra cá, aqui. Hã? Tá bom. Arrasta, rapaz! Uma!
For me, the power of such a broad definition resides in the possibility of its instrumentalization, of its use. But once you see a thing as a tool, the logic question seems not to be how shall I use it, but what else can I use it for? And so we see the tag field recording connected more and more to different practices and results. In fact, maybe it would be better to adopt Rui Chaves, the Portuguese researcher and performer. It would be better to adopt his proposition of field recording with a twist, as something lying somewhere between a tool and a bunch of practices, instead of a practice. As such, we could link it to areas such as ornithology, acoustic ecology, bioacoustics, ethnomusicology, and so on. As a practice dash tool connected to the realization of artistic works, it dates back not only to the surgence of sound cinema, but at least conceptually to the work of John Cage and his ideas regarding the liberation of noise, Pierre Schaeffer and the musique concrète approach, using sounds of varied origins with the aim of creating musical works, or Luc Ferrari and his musique anecdotique, a composition practice based on recordings of everyday situations, among many others.
Eu vou ficar aqui, olha. Essa tirada dele, pra não passar de lá. Quer dar a roda nela? Tá bom. Pode. Eu também não, você tá parecendo de. Você tá aí não é de trás, não, depois, não? Tava certo, filho. Depois tá aqui. Não é depois, não é? Você fica aí pra mim, deixa eu buscar. Eu pus em hora. Eu tava bem, mas não tava tanto assim também, não.
3. The personal narrative. There is this realization of that field recording carries in itself already a history, a multiple one. So the first question is dismissed by it alone. The first question could also give the impression that I dislike Billy Ball, the project, the noise rock one, which is not the case at all. Maybe it's my own ambiguous feelings about my involvement in what I consider to be very disparate projects that makes me somewhat surprised with Xabier playing in Billy Ball, and also being able to be careful in the choice of algorithms for ambisonics decoding and placement of microphones, and so on. But as soon as you check the wide scope of interests displayed by the immense and diverse production of Xabier, the first question proves nonsense. I'll share with you some links now to Audiolab. Is let's see. The chat window does not appear to me. Okay, now it appears to me. Sorry. Yeah, I guess internet is quite slow. But anyway, Audio Lab.
I'm
It's
not,
like
I'm not
this
seeing a link. Oh, there it goes. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Audio Lab is an organization in the Basque Country which is run by Xabier Lucarulo and Tamara Garcia as well. I don't know if Tamara runs the organization or is part of the organization, but Xabier and Luca for sure. They were the filming crew with I was working with them. They have like really interesting projects going on there, such as, and this is my favorite one probably, the sound map of the Basque Country. Yeah, my internet is really bad. Yeah, okay. Now I have it, I guess. I would recommend checking the recordings connected to the Basque Carnival, which is like really rich, I would say, and also somewhat scary. I will try to develop this in the following. Four, aliens, different fields, different worlds. For field recording, how the field is defined is at least as important as how the recording in itself has been accomplished. This is a quotation of a book which I would also recommend the reading. Yeah, I'm sorry that my internet is so bad. Okay. Well, I'll put the links later. So now we could approach the issue by means of a not so obvious question. Is conceptual consistency something that makes sense to you? This is a question for Erkitzia. Do you think purity and absolute homogeneity is possible? These are questions I made. I actually asked him that about how could he concile such projects as the sound map of the Basque Country, field recordings, and the Billy Bow project, and other rock projects that he had. I have like 2 hours of interview with Xabier that I made in the last days. I could not make like a proper a transcription of it. So I will just throw the questions and let them in the air, and hopefully the questions themselves speak about what I think field recording deal with. And yet, I feel there is this tendency, even though it's very heterogenic, his projects are very heterogenic once they are combined together. I feel there is this tendency to be attracted by the use of adjectives or qualifications which point not only to a feeling of disturbance, but also to mixed feelings of disturbance, violence, and awe. So the noise and the ox carts. I suspect there are connections with his childhood and his grandfather's stories. His readings of Victor Hugo's book about the Basque country, but not recognizing the sounds described in the book, are also very important as a reference for this project. 5. About tourism, noise, and the alien. The ox cart driver does not need a name for the sound. It's in his body, and that's enough. Iri orgaren karanka, the squeaky sound of the ox cart, a translation of Victor Hugo's Alpes et Pyrénées to the Basque language. I'll try to share with you a YouTube video now. Hopefully it works. We have the tool here. Yeah, my internet is free.
I would like to present a little bit this project, which it's still open, and I'm working on it somehow. I don't know, a little bit by chance, and you will notice why during the last 7-8 years. But I think a part of some kind of fetishism that can.
Well, it does not seem to work.
We can find behind this sound itself that you will listen during the. It's like he heard that sound, and just 50 or 60 years later, he heard it again. But he was not the only one. And just 50 or 60 years later, and
So that was playing for me, but if you're in the mosaic mode, you have to click on the.
He kept that little title of his book. 200 years later, when the Basque writer Koldo Izaguirre received the commission to translate for the very first time that book to Basque language, he changed the original title to.
Okay.
So, it's probable that maybe some of you never heard this sound, but reminds you something else. Well, in 1880, and this is the beginning of my story and my research, the famous romantic writer Victor Hugo wrote one of the most interesting texts ever written about the Basque country. It was called Alps and Pyrenees. He could find a better title, obviously, but for some reason, I imagine mainly commercial, in an era when travel books were real bestsellers, he kept that literal title of this book. 200 years later, when the Basque writer Koldo Izaguirre received the commission to translate for the very first time that book to Basque language, he changed the original title to Iri orgaren karranka, which means the squeaking sound of an ox cart. Look at how different is the title of one to the other. The main reason for such a radical change in the title becomes clear on the first part of the original travel book. The book is written in the 19th century travel diary style, paying special attention to sounds, where Hugo describes the French land from Bordeaux to Hendaye, and then, let's say, the Basque land from Hendaye, France, to San Sebastian, Spain. In fact, he lived there for some time. But there is one text, probably the briefest chapter of the book, which just doesn't fit at all with the overall tone of the book. It describes the exact moment when the diligence, driving him among other tourists, crosses the border with Spain in the Basque Country. And it says, between Bidart and Saint-Jean-de-Luz, at the door of a poor inn, I saw an old Spanish ox cart. By that I mean the little cart of Biscay, with 2 oxen and 2 full wheels, turning with the axle and making a terrible noise that can be heard from a yard, even into the mountains. I was very small when I crossed these mountains and when I heard it for the first time. The other day, as soon as it hit my ear, just hearing it, I felt suddenly rejuvenated. It seemed to me that all my childhood revived in me. As the ox cart approached with its wild music, I distinctly saw this beautiful past, and it seemed to me that between this past and today, there was nothing. It was yesterday. The travelers around me were covering their ears. My heart was raptured. Never a Weber's choir, a Beethoven